Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Alright, so this is going to be really short, but here are the top 5 fighters for the Great League Remix. I'm also going to analyze the rankings as well as do a little bit of team building with you just to show you how you can cover these Pokemon and or make them really good in the Great League Remix. Again, like, we're going to do some team building along with analysis in here. Hopefully you guys like this combination, but I'll be analyzing, in my opinion, what can be the top 5 fighters in the Great League Remix. Okay, first off, we're going to start off with Medicham. Medicham is the most powerful fighter in Great League Remix and in regular Great League for good reason. Counter, Ice Punch, and Psychic have just such great coverage. If you want to, you can use Power Punch. And a Medicham with Power Punch is extremely powerful because it's just so bulky. Medicham XL, as you see here, basically it beats other fighters so hard that it's just really, like, that's kind of what it is. The reason why Medicham XL is so good is, like I said, is because of its bulk. It's the bulkiest out of all of them, and it also has the greatest coverage spread out of all of the fighters in the Great League Remix. As you see here, you're basically beating down Scrafty. Fighters destroy Bastiodon. It also does very well against the Weather Ballers. Things like Polytoon or Abomasnow will go down to Medicham XL as long as it's in, like, even shield scenarios, and it can lift through a lot of damage just because of its bulk. The sheer bulk is reason enough to put Medicham at number 1. And if you're going to build a team around a fighter, it probably is a Medicham XL if you have it. Again, it's the number 1 lead, as you see here. If you lead with it and then put 2 things in the back that's the basic strategy with Medicham XL and regular Great League as well. You lead with it, have 2 weaknesses in the back. If you win with Medicham XL, it's so bulky, it can actually just run through a lot of things. Medicham XL functions very well in all positions in the Great League Remix. I wouldn't use it as a safe switch just because of Altaria or Charmers. Fun fact, you can actually beat Altaria in a 2-shield. More on that later. However, as you see here, Medicham pretty much runs through a majority of the Weather Ball meta, and along with that, if you close out with it, it's not bad either. As you see here, Medicham XL is still in the top 10 as a closer. In fact, it's probably one of the best things about it is it literally deletes an entire Toxicroak from the face of the earth. If you Psychic a Toxicroak, it will die. And that's the thing about Medicham. Not only that, the Psychic and the fighting type it gets makes it a very powerful mon. It makes it really interesting. And as you see here, it essentially runs through so many good Pokemon that it's just, there's no doubt, and you don't really need to explain too much about why Medicham XL is so good. Now, as you see here, if you want to build a team around Medicham XL, you want to have something that, like, destroys Charmers, which would probably be Registeel. So Registeel and Medicham pair very well together, again, just because Registeel does cover Medicham's weaknesses. As you see, the team itself is just stupid bulky, pretty safe in consistency. However, what we have in the back is it combines very well. Like I said, Registeel is very powerful, so if you put Registeel in the back, you take care of that Charmer weakness, and it gives you more... it gives you more as well. So as you see here, we have plenty of options you can pair with this core. These two just pair so well with each other just because Registeel is the King of Steel, and King of Steel will be able to take down the Flyers as well as the Charmers. So if you put this combination in the back and we put, per se, let's say we put Licky in the back. As you see here, we put Licky in the back, and we get something with good coverage, good bulk, and safety and consistency. As you see here, Medicham has a very strong matchup against other fighters, and even though Registeel and Licky are weak to fires in the back, you have Medicham to match up against it, or Registeel can deal heavy damage. But overall, as you see, it's still a very good team. As you see here, this team does lose to things like fire. Well, actually, it's pretty safe, to be honest with you. If you look over here, Charizard, Typhlosion, Ho, you're not going to see a lot of those. Your biggest problem is probably going to be Deoxys Defense, because with Deoxys Defense, you basically... Medicham XL's attacks are all resisted. Ice Punches don't do much to it either. Now, the thing is, if their Deoxys Defense is rocking Rock Slide, you're in a good thing. However, if it's rocking Thunderbolt, you're kind of in a little bit of trouble. But there's still a lot of things you can do, even if you see Deoxys Defense. Licky is super effective against Deoxys Defense. Registeel's Flash Cannon still do give Deoxys Defense a problem. So it's still very powerful. So again, this is a good team if you really want to use it, but as you see, Medicham and Registeel, basically anything that's able to cover Medicham's Charmer weakness, as well as give it a chance against those flyers. Bang. This is, if you want to use this one, it's a pretty good team as well. Second, we have Deoxys Defense. Alright, so Deoxys Defense is technically, like I mentioned, pseudo fighters are technically fighters. So I'm going to group them in with here just because counter is so good. As you see here, with Deoxys Defense, you're able to even beat Scrafty. So even though Scrafty is a dark type and does you damage, essentially Deoxys Defense is able to run over everything Medicham XL can, except you have further coverage, and it's really interesting. Like I said, the recommended moveset here is Rock Slide and Thunderbolt, because with Rock Slide and Thunderbolt, you cover so much ground. You're still going to lose against Flyers, etc., as you see over here with Wiggly. You'll lose against Flyers just because it does resist counter. However, the good thing about Deoxys Defense as a fighter is that you essentially can run through Wigglytuff or Force Shield. As you see here, 505 is not a bad rating, so there's a lot of things you can do with Deoxys Defense. Deoxys Defense also allows you to gather. You can use Psycho Boost as well. It gives you the option of using Psycho Boost, and the thing about Deoxys Defense is it can take a lot of damage. Because of Rock Slide and Thunderbolt, like I said, the moveset coverage gives you a lot of options to use, and because of its tankiness and its ability to get energy really quickly with counter, you can force shields in the lead, sack it entirely, or there's a lot of fancy stuff you could do with Deoxys Defense. As a lead, Deoxys Defense is still pretty good. As you see here, ranks at number 5, still in the top 10, along with, as it pretty much beats down like everything I mentioned before. You can use it as a switch as well. Deoxys Defense isn't a bad safe switch, just be aware of those Sableyes. Ghost types can be a nuisance in this meta, especially with Registeel being around, so look out for those Driplims and those Jellicents to be out there. So Ghost types will give Deoxys Defense somewhat of a problem. Yeah, Thunderbolt forward, however, even then, your Deoxys Defense still gets destroyed by a Shadow Ball from a Jellicent. So very, very mindful of that. Again, Sableye is probably going to be one of your biggest threats as far as switches goes, because Sableye is really good in this meta, as long as you can avoid a Charmer. So as you see here, Deoxys Defense, very, very... And also Mew is also kind of, as you see here, 666 is not a wonderful number in a sense for you if you're using it, but Deoxys Defense is a really good safe switch. As a closer, Deoxys Defense still does pretty well. As you see here, I'm going to have to look for it. However, Deoxys Defense ranks at number 21. It's still really good for several reasons. It can actually beat Altaria. It can still beat down Bastiodon. And because of it's so tanky, as long as you have energy lead, etc., you can probably take out a Toxicroak. You can actually take out Toxicroak with Psycho Boost. One whole Psycho Boost will take out a Toxicroak. You also, like I said, Psycho Boost gives you options. So you can run Rock Slide, Psycho Boost, you can run Thunderbolt, Psycho Boost, but there are options for you out there if you do not want to use Deoxys Defense with this coverage moveset. But, again, versatile, powerful, and it's just really strong in the Great League Remix as a fighter. Alright, so if you're going to build a team with Deoxys Defense, it basically fits like everywhere, so... one of the teams that I thought about was Deoxys Defense with Altaria. So Deoxys Defense is a giant tank that's really spammy. Then you put it with Altaria, and as you see here, you got some decent coverage. You're able to take out other fighters. You also have Deoxys Defense with Rock Slide to be able to take out those ice types that threaten Altaria. Now, if we mix it in with Registeel, as you see here, Deoxys, Altaria, and Registeel is a very powerful combination. As you see here, this team's really, really good, really, really powerful, and has a really low threat score. With Wishcash being the only thing that basically is able to destroy all of your Pokemon. Again, you can use Psycho Boost with Deoxys Defense. If you do use Psycho Boost with Deoxys Defense, it does affect how your team rates. Now, I don't really see too much of a use of using Thunderbolt. I mean, Thunderbolt's out there and it can be good, but Rock Slide, with Rock Slide, you can still do it. Again, you're trying to stop the ice types from Altaria, so Rock Slide still does just as well. And with Registeel, you basically cover Altaria as well. If you look over here, does pretty good still. With Psycho Boost, you still do very, very well. Again, just be careful and mindful about Sableye. Sableye is probably, or just other ghost types and dark types, is your worst nightmare with Deoxys Defense. You can deal a decent amount of damage with Rock Slide, etc. So if you're able to get Sableye or Mandibuzz in kill range of a Rock Slide or of Psycho Boost, you can take it out with Deoxys Defense. Again, Deoxys Defense meshes well with a lot of teams, so if you want to use it as a safe switch or if you want to close it out, it's really up to you, and you have the option of using its moveset as Psycho Boost, Rock Slide, Thunderbolt, just whatever combination you want with it. Alright, now fighter number 3 is Shadow Champ or Machamp. I'm going to group both of these together, but ideally you want a Shadow Machamp. As you see here, Machamp ranks at number 8 as a Shadow. Again, you want the Shadow one just because Rock Slide damage with Shadow damage matters. Like, the only way for you to effectively beat an Altaria in the one shield is you have to Rock Slide it to death. If you can land a Rock Slide on things like Altaria or Driplim, you can take the match from a flyer, which makes Shadow Champ really good. Makes it really bad is that it's very glassy. If you put it with a Charmer, 9 times out of 10, your Shadow Champ or Machamp is probably going to die, regardless of what you do. What makes Machamp so good is it has Cross Chop. With Cross Chop and Shadow Champ damage and Shadow Machamp damage, you just do so much. So it adds up and it does very, very well. As you see here in the Great League Remix, Shadow Champ is a number 6 lead along with the regular one. They both rank in the top 10. Bastiodon's worst nightmare is Shadow Champ because the Shadow Punch damage is just so good. As you see here, you're going to run through basically Bastiodon, all the steel typings, and like I mentioned before, if you have Rock Slide, you can take out Altaria in the one shield. The problem is you do lose against things like Deoxys Defense and Toxicroak. Deoxys Defense does rip you a new one just because of its own count, like just because it resists your counter, and basically because of that heavy resistance. If it's fighting resistance, you're kind of in trouble if you see a Deoxys Defense. And it also has it can have Psycho Boost, so one Psycho Boost will destroy a Machamp if you have no shields. A second one, even if it's debuffed, the second one will likely KO you at a very comfortable range, so you have to be really careful. I wouldn't switch Shadow Champ into anything. It's best used in the lead or closer. It's still powerful as a switch, as you see here, but like I mentioned, 9 times out of 10, you see what's in the back? It's Psychic, Charmers, and Shadow Victory Bell. Psychic types will melt you a new one. There's a reason why Medicham is so good, because Medicham takes neutral damage from Psychic types. Machamp doesn't, because it doesn't carry that Psychic subtype. Because it doesn't carry that, Charmers and Hypno will rip you a new hole. So Machamp has to be very, very careful of these two archetypes, which are actually pretty popular in the Great League Remix. As a closer, Shadow Champ does rank at number 6, so it's still in the top 10. As you see here, if you don't have a Shadow one, honestly, I probably wouldn't use it just because like I said, the Shadow damage is what makes Machamp so beastly. If you don't have a regular one, you might as well just use another alternative like Vigoroth, etc. But as you see here, Shadow Champ in the closer basically rips through a lot of the elemental, it whips through a lot of the weather ballers. You can rip through a Pelipper with a Rock Slide, and it also takes out things like Bastiodon. It destroys Registeel, Scrafty, and Obstagoon. The problem is, you can still lose to Registeel. Wait, what? Yes, you can. So the thing about Registeel is that if Registeel can land a Flash Count on you, it can kill you just because that's how glassy Shadow Champ is. Honestly, even though it is a top fighter in this meta and statistically does good, there are better options out there if you don't have a Medicham XL or if you don't have a Vigoroth. Alright, so if you're going to create a team with Shadow Champ, just keep in mind, Shadow Champ or regular Machamp has very terrible bulk. Yes, it's safe and consistent if you're able to line up correctly, and it's going to beat the unholy heck out of your opponent, but like I mentioned, it's very glassy. It will die to a Flash Cannon from Registeel, so be very, very careful. As you see here, if you scroll down, the combinations you put together with this, it can still mesh well with plenty of combinations. However, you definitely want to put 2 tanks behind Shadow Machamp. As you see here, Machamp and Cresselia go very well together just because Cresselia's bulk can make up for the coverage. If we put Registeel in the back, or as you see here, you could use Bastiodon or little Ninetales. We could put A9 in the back and see how we do. As you see here, if you put all these 3 together, as you see here, great coverage, good coverage, semi-good bulk, which is okay because what you're going to do essentially with this team is just deal a ton of damage, but it's very safe. Again, when you put together a team with Shadow Champ, you want something that's spammy and possibly covers its weakness. The reason why you want the Lowland Ninetales is because Powder Snow does cover its flying weakness. Weather Ball is also an amazing move, and with Cresselia you have a tank with Moonblast and Grass Knot, so you could take out a lot of things with Cresselia or use it to tank out. But basically, put something tanky or spammy behind it. Make sure you're covering that Psychic and that flying weakness that it presents. Also the Charmers. Make sure you be careful of the Charmers, which is why we have Lowland Ninetales in the back right here along with Cresselia, because they're really tanky. Because you're going to have to face Charmers. Get it, Charmers? Anyways, if you do see it, this team actually does very well. But again, Shadow Champ is a lot more riskier, and I would say requires a lot more guts compared to a lot of other ones because it takes a lot of damage. You're going to have to be really good with energy management and just having confidence with your Pokemon, because Shadow Champ is going to, like I said, it's not bulky. It's going to eat a lot of damage. But if you want to use it, it's still really good for the Greatly Green. Alright, fighter number 4 is actually Vigoroth. As you see here, Vigoroth is very powerful. It ranks at number 11, but it's actually the most powerful safe switch in this Great League meta. The reason being is because Vigoroth is spammy, plus with Body Slime and Bulldoze, Bulldoze actually allows you to wipe out Bastiodon from the face of the planet. Because of this combination, Vigoroth is extremely powerful. With the exception of Vigoroth is... Okay, so here's the thing. Vigoroth ironically loses to other fighters, which is why you see it loses against Scrafty. However, it has high wins against the Ghost-type archetype, for example, like... Jealous, well, I don't think it actually, like, card beats Jellicent, but, like, I guess a better example would probably be Sableye. Sableye's Shadow Claws, it is resisted by Vigoroth because of the normal typing. As you see here, Vigoroth is spammy, powerful, and because it has a very high attack rating, you'll win CMP a lot of times. But it basically functions as a fighter that somewhat can lose to other fighters in a lot of scenarios. As a lead, Vigoroth is still really good. Number 23, again, being able to rip through pretty much all those ice types, as well ice steel types, anything that's weak to fighting, Vigoroth still does very well. Combine that with Body Slam, which does a good amount of chunk damage, and Bulldoze, which is absolutely wipes out steel types from the face of the earth. It's really, really good. You can actually beat Altaria with energy advantage, so just keep that in mind. With energy advantage plus shields, you can actually take out Altaria. Now, this is what I mentioned. The reason why it's so good, it is the most powerful safe switch in the Great League Remix. As you see here, it's essentially able to just truck through pretty much most of everything. And even if you do lose against it, Body Slam does big damage. So you're going to leave a lot of things either reeling or dead. So just keep that in mind. Vigoroth is an incredibly powerful safe switch. You can use it a lot as a safe switch, and like I said, because of the Body Slam spam and the Bulldoze threat, it can actually do a ton of damage over time and possibly set up plays for you where you would leave this Pokemon in the back. For example, if you, against Altaria, if you do face an Altaria, and this is what I mean right here, you do face an Altaria, as you see here, Vigoroth actually wins the 2-shield against Altaria. So if they throw an Altaria into you and they don't know this, then guess what? You're gonna Body Slam, go on Body Slam. But as you see here, even if you do lose against an Altaria wins, Altaria lives with only 17 HP. So what you can do is you can farm down said Mon, leave it with no shield, farm it down, and be able to essentially KO it. So there's a lot of strategies you can use with Vigoroth, which is why it's such a really good safe switch. It's also I wouldn't say you can find it easily now, a lot of events, and because of the congested spawn pool in Pokemon Go, Vigoroth isn't readily available. However, it's excessively powerful, as you see here. And if you have a Slack Up laying around, I would give you... Dude, use the best IV one if you want to build a Vigoroth, but as you see here, Vigoroth is a beast. Vigoroth is so powerful that in the closer, it can take out things like Meganium and Alolan Ninetales. Even though it's obscenely thick, Vigoroth's Body Slam, that Body Slam damage really does add up. And again, at certain ranges, your Bulldoze will kill a Bastiodon and a Registeel at full range. So really, really good, and I really, really recommend it. It's probably the one I would recommend the most if you do not have a Medicham XL, or if you're looking for a safe switch but you like a fighter safe switch, Vigoroth is your best friend if you're looking for a fighter safe switch. Alright, so if you're going to put Vigoroth in a team, just keep in mind Vigoroth beats the unholy crap out of everything. Its strength is in the fact that Body Slam spam is very, very strong. So if you're going to put Vigoroth with a team, it's good. It's a fantastic safe switch. There's a lot of things you can do with Vigoroth. As you see here, it's not super bulky. It has decent bulk. You can kind of use that normal typing to your advantage against ghost types. Keep in mind, Vigoroth does have a hard time against other ghost types just because of the fact that it's... Ghost types resist your fighting types, they also resist your Body Slam, so that's why Frostus is really good against Vigoroth. And if you do face a Drifloon, you can get walled, so be very careful against a Viggy. Okay, so the thing about Viggy is that Viggy works against a lot of combinations, however, it also loses to other fighters. Because it's a normal type, you take super effective fighting damage. That's why Deoxys Defense does well against Vigoroth, because it takes super effective counter damage, and ironically, the counter damage you do with Deoxys Defense, it's resisted because Deoxys Defense is psychic. So what we want to do is we want to add a Pokemon that is able to resist, to take out other fighters like Altaria. Altaria and Vigoroth make a very powerful combination. As you see here, not too much coverage, but the bulk, safety, and consistency is still really, really good. Now, I found this combination to be very, very powerful. If you do Vigoroth Altaria, and if you put a Cresselia with it, or if you put a tank, if you put a psychic tank like Hypno, etc., like, it'll do really well. So if you see this, like, if you put Hypno, the rating goes good. If you put Cresselia with it, it does just as well. As you see here, as Psychic type, just to cover that Vigoroth weakness, does very, very well. Cresselia does really well as well. If you put Cresselia with it, which gives it that tankiness, you actually get a very powerful team. As you see here, 3 A's across the board and good coverage. It's really, really strong. So this team will do very, very well for you, but again, this is the reason why it gets a little concerning, is because Frostless. Frostless is able to take out the Psychic type / Flyer types, and it has good typing, and just because of it resists fighting. That's pretty much it with Frostless. So just keep in mind, you have to be careful when it comes to Frostless and other ghost types. Other than that, as long as you can cover that fighting weakness, Vigoroth will do very, very well for you, especially you want to encounter Bastiodon with Vigoroth, and Registeel, because you're going to beat the unholy crap out of Steel types with Vigoroth. And also Ice types do fall prey to Vigoroth, just because Vigoroth Body Slam, like, Ice types can't take the combination, well, none of them can take the combination of counter as well as that Body Slam spam damage. It's really, really strong, and you wouldn't see him peel out with Vigoroth. Alright, for fighter number 5, we do have Scrafty. Okay, so here's the thing. Scrafty is really tricky to use. Out of all the fighters here, if you're thinking about using a fighter, Scrafty's probably the last one, because Charmers do really well in this meta, and in my opinion, there are better fighters out there. Scrafty is really strong, however, it's pretty much there to serve as the fact that it can beat Psychic types like Hypno, just because it resists Psychic attacks because of its Dark typing. However, like I said, because it's a Dark type, it will take super effective damage against other fighters, which is just absolutely hilarious. It will also die to 1 Moonblast from a Cresselia, and Charm does heavy damage. So use it at your own risk. However, Scrafty can still be good. As you see, it leads at the lucky number 7, being able to essentially beat the unholy crud out of Bastiodon, snipe down Abomasnow, and it can basically just rev up those those pups with counter, and it just revs up. It's basically gonna rev up and has foul play. The good thing about Scrafty is that, unlike Vigoroth and like Deoxys Defense, because you do sport foul play, it is able to take out ghost types. So it does have more coverage per se, but it also is a very risky mon to run. Because if you do see, like I mentioned, if you see other fighting types, you basically lose. If you see a Alolan Ninetales and it happens to be Charmtails, you better be careful, because it's going to suck a lot. Also, Scrafty can get nuked by Registeel by Focus Blast, so just be very mindful of Scrafty. It's a very good lead, however. Again, general thing with Scrafty is to lead with it, and then whatever's in the back, pivot out with it. If you don't win the lead with it, or if you don't have a specific strategy you are trying to use with Scrafty, then you want 2 things in the back with it to cover flyers, just like a lot of the other team building things you've seen here. As you see here, it doesn't function well as a switch. Number 56, however, if you throw it into a matchup like Registeel, Abomasnow, etc., you can just rev up all that energy and foul play the unholy hell out of whatever's in the back. It also doesn't function too well as a closer. Again, it's best used in the lead, Scrafty's position, and as you see here, again, it just basically beats the unholy crap out of things. I think the good thing about it is it also gives, again, it gives ghost types the hard time, along with Sableye. So with Sableye, if you don't need a return from Sableye, you're going to be pretty comfy, because those foul plays, those power punch, those counters do neutral damage. Along with that, those actually, no, I think you do, no, not, they don't do neutral damage. I think it's foul play, which is why you have such a good matchup against Sableye. I think it's really foul play, because I remember, like, Ghost double resist fighting, so then it's, if Ghost double resist fighting, then I believe for Sableye, it does, I think it is, you can tell I don't use Sableye a lot, but as you see here, I think it really is, it does, because counter is resisted. However, the reason you win is because you could just go straight foul play, as you see here. So foul play is basically what gives you the ability to beat Sableye. That's if it's a non-XL version. If it is an XL Sableye, be careful, because XL Sableye is a beast, and it's going to leave you with 11 HP. So if they have a little bit of chip damage, they can take the matchup with you. So as you see here, Scrafty is really good. However, be very careful and be very mindful of how you use it. I would say it's still really good for the fact that it's able to cover Psychics and cover Ghost types. But again, the fact that you're weak to other fighters and you get Charmed down to Oblivion makes it really dangerous to run Scrafty. Alright, so here's Scrafty. So Scrafty's individual profile, as you see here, it is bulky. It does have some good consistency. So on most of the other things, it does pretty well. The problem is its coverage and the fact that it just loses to other fighters. So if we're gonna build a team with Scrafty, we need to cover fighters and Charmers, which is kind of hard to do. But what we can do is, let's see. We have that in the lead. If you pair it with Registeel, now you still lose to other fighters, so we can't put Can't put ice types with it either because then we would lose to that. What if we put it... Okay, what if we put it with Golbat? Because we Golbat, it take out fighters and it also resists Charmers. Okay, so this kind of covers it a little well. What can we put in the back as well? Again, we can't put fighters with it. We could probably... What if we put... We can't put fighter... We need fighters, flyers, and then we... Well, what if we put Charm Tails? So what if we do, like, Charm Ninetales? So we take Powder Snow Ninetales and we put Charm in it. That way it covers fighters and it also covers Altaria, which is also the flyer. So if we put that together, see this? Okay, so this works decently well. I would just say Registeel. Well, Registeel, you could beat Registeel as long as you match it with Scrafty. As you see here, this team does decently well. Well, it does decently well, but like I guess that's the issue with Scrafty is you have to cover Charmers, you have to cover other fighters, and you have to cover flyers. So you cover more things with Scrafty. The good thing is Scrafty is good against the Psychic Heavy meta, and just because it has Foul Play and against Ghost types. So depending on how it shapes out, Scrafty's could still be good, but it's just rough. It's all I have to say. It's a really rough mod to put together with these combinations. But as you see here, this team does decently well. Golbat, Alolan Ninetales. I think Scrafty works best with, let's see, you don't want two fighters. You don't want that. Let's see what else pairs. I think I'll spend a little more time on Scrafty because it's a little more difficult to put a team together with. As you see, we can pair with Registeel. However, if you see other fighters, you're pretty much dead. It's a little tricky with Scrafty. With Scrafty. We could put Super Meta to it. However, if you put two things that are weak to fighters, it's gonna be a little rough. For example, if we pop a Registeel and we put Cresselia behind it, even if you put... So you put it with two tanks, and as you see here... Wow, this actually does really well. Okay, so you're gonna have to just be really careful of other fighters just because even though Registeel can pop it off, just be a little mindful. As you see here, this team has a semi-big threat score. So, again, Scrafty is just a little difficult to build a team around just because you have to cover so many typings. However... Needless to say, as you see here, there are some combinations that you could put with Scrafty that will still make it really, really good, and it can perform really well. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, if you're going to team build with fighters, just be mindful of Charmers, Flyers, and of course the fact that they beat the unholy crap out of Bastiodon and other Steel types. And Ice types as well. So fighters do really, really well in this meta as long as you build around their weaknesses. Well, that's what you generally have to do as a team builder anyways, and make sure you have a good combination of Pokemon that you are comfortable with using. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the new format with the team building and the analysis. Let me know if you did like it, if you didn't in the comments, and I'll adjust it accordingly. But as you see here, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys haven't done so yet, please like and subscribe. Good luck on your Gravity League sets, and I will see you guys on the next video.